Hi and welcome to another Dex from the Graphic Design School. Today we'll be using Illustrator to create the kind of layered look you can see here. We combine a photographic image with a vector image. So I have my logo H&S, which is a local florist, and combine it with a rose and leaf image. You'll notice that part of the image overlaps the front of the logo and some of the image goes behind the logo. So that helps create this lovely layered effect and also unites the logo and the image. You might have noticed this type of design around at the moment. There's some really cool stuff happening. On the left you can see some flowers and fruit and see how they interact with the type. Generally a lovely clean sans serif font works well. On the right I really love this, really cool. You can see how the figures, some parts of the figures go in front of the letters and some parts go behind the letters. And what it does is it unites the letters and the imagery so it becomes one. So that's what we'll be doing today. We'll be using layers in Illustrator, and in Photoshop we'll be learning how to cut images off backgrounds and use layer masks. This is my original logo, so that's where we'll begin in Illustrator. But before we get to Illustrator, we're going to hop on into Photoshop and have a look at my images and get my images ready for the Illustrator work. So this is my rose image, which is really beautiful. I love the colors here and the desaturation in this image. So this was my original inspiration. I just needed some more vibrant leaves because as you can see, the leaves in the background are quite faded and blurry. So they're not going to work with a kind of a logo work that I want to do. So I found some leaves that are nice and crisp and cool. The only problem is they are a little bit too bright and vibrant, so I'm going to have to desaturate them a little bit. But let's start with the rose. We're going to use the pen tool to cut it out of the background. So select your pen tool and we're going to start to create a path around the rose petals. But to save you watching every click, in a moment we'll speed up the video. Just to mention that when you do cut an image out of a background, if it's on a dark background like this, some of that shadowing and color will be on the edges of the flower or whatever it is you cutting out of the background. We'll have to adjust that later, but I'll show you how to do that. I'm going to include some of these stronger buds that look like they're coming into the foreground because they'll look really good overlapping part of my logo. So we'll speed up the video now, and then I'll find you at the end with a lovely saved path. Great, so once you finished your path, click on paths, you're going to save your path. I've saved it already as rose, so name it accordingly. Once you have your path, just right click and save path. Where you see new path, you'll find save path. So that is my rose outline. I want to cut it out, so go to where your paths are, hold down Command and click onto that little thumbnail of the path and you'll see a running path around it. Go to your layers and we're going to Command C to copy and Command V to paste. So straight away you'll see your rose appears on a transparent background. I've just clicked off my background so you can see the transparency. As I mentioned, you might get a bit of this dark area happening. So select your clone stamp tool, go to layers and hold down Command so you can see a little running path and just click on that so you get a running path around your rose. Hold down Option to select an area of the rose close to where the dark edge is, or you might have the opposite. You might have a really light edge on a dark object, and I'll just do this edge so you can see how it works. So just selecting some of the rose, I'll deselect that so you can see it makes it a whole lot whiter and it's going to integrate onto the white background a whole lot better. I'm going to take this rose and just drag it into the corner to make way for my leaves. We'll go to the leaves and then look at cutting them out from the background and desaturating them. The way we're going to cut these out is using our channels. It's much easier to lift an image off a background if the background is a solid color or solid white, because there's a definitive edge. We're going to have a look at the channels. So just look at your channels and find one that is darkest. So either here my red or my blue. I think I'm going to take my blue as it's a bit more solid. Just drag it down, copy it, and there's my blue copy. Now don't worry about what it does to the actual image. That doesn't matter. What we're going to be using this channel for is just to create a layer mask so we can cut the image out from the background. We're going to go Image, Adjustments, and go to your levels, Command L. Drag it to the side so you can still see your image. And then we're just going to take the black from the far left and start to drag it across to the right. So what it does is it starts to create a kind of a silhouette effect, so you get a solid black happening, and this makes it a whole lot easier to create a layer mask, because your layer mask will be solid black and white. Whatever is black is transparent, and whatever is white will be image. So as you might have guessed, we're going to flip this in a moment so that black becomes white and white becomes black. We're just going to go OK. You'll notice that some areas are still white. What we need to do here is just make it black. You can do it in your channels, or you can do it when we create our layer mask. Just create your brush tool, get your black, and then you can just start to color in. Make your brush a little bit bigger, and you can just start to color it in. So really quite simple. This might be quite time consuming depending on the kind of image you have. I'll just do a little bit here, and then I'll show you how to continue doing it once you have it on the layer, and then you can actually see how it masks the image, and you'll be able to see areas that are transparent that shouldn't be transparent, and vice versa. We're going to create a selection of this. So hold down Command and just click on that. So what we want to do is select the black and not the white. So we want to inverse that selection. So you can either go Select, Inverse, or Command Shift I. And what it does is it flips it. So now it has the black selected. We're going to go to our layers and then create a layer mask. There you go. So if I zoom right in, you might be able to see that there are areas that are transparent, like on the edge of this leaf over here, that shouldn't be transparent. So we want to manipulate the layer mask. So hold down Command and just click on that layer mask, and you'll be able to see where it is. And then to manipulate it, we're going to hold down Option, click, and there we go. And you can see there was a sneaky little white line that got in there, so we can get rid of that. So we're going to make this brush tool white. So we're going to flip it, and then you can just deselect. Brush tool. Deselect and just start to paint those areas that are black. So whatever is black is transparent, and whatever is white is your actual leaf. And then we can get rid of this. So again, a little bit time consuming to go through the whole image and try and find all the areas that need filling in. So we'll maybe just speed up the video for a little bit so we can get our nice clean image in a moment. When you're happy with your mask, hold down your option, click again on that, and then you'll get your image. As I said, we want to desaturate this, so we're going to put an adjustment layer on top of that. So select Vibrance. This is just my image. Your image might be a little bit different. I'm just going to make that -50 on vibrancy and drag down the saturation also to -50. And that better matches my image. So you'll see a layer adjustment comes in the form of an extra layer. So we want to flatten this So merge down so it becomes one, and then just do a save as, so you have your original leaf desaturated. So you have your original leaf if you ever want to come back to that. So I'm going to select my layer mask, my image, Command C to copy it, and then go to my floral die cut. We want to paste it behind, so paste it. There we go. You can see it matches much better. And just drag it. You might have done some sketches and planning. It doesn't just fall into place easily. You'll have to look at your Illustrator work and kind of work with your image to see what works with it and what areas you want to overlap. So I've already planned mine, so I know exactly where it's going to be. I'm just going to delete that background. I'm going to merge my rows down so it's all on one layer, and then do a save as. There we go. Great. Now we're ready to go into Illustrator. So here's our Illustrator artwork, my H&S and my rectangle. If we look at layers, you'll notice that it's made up of the rectangle, which is an element, and H&S, which is still type. This logo will become the mask for the image that will rest on top of the logo. So we need to make sure that it's a compound path. Select your type if it's still type, and we're going to create outlines. So hold down Command Shift and press your O to turn it into outlines. Select your rectangle. We need to create an outline of that too. So go up to Object, Path, and go down to Outline Stroke. So if we go into Preview, you will see it's all paths. We're going to create a united path out of this. So select everything on your artboard. Go down to Pathfinder in your panels. Far left, select Unite under Shape Modes so that it makes it into one shape. So if we look under layers, it's one group but still different sub-layers here. We want to have it as a compound path. So make sure that all of that is selected, and then go to Object, Compound Path, Make, or Command 8. So you'll see that hops all into one layer as a compound path. So that's the way we want to have our logo when we're working with layers. So that is our logo. We're going to create the grey background now. Click on Create New Layer in your Layers panel. Call it accordingly. I'm going to call it Grey Background. Drag it behind the logo. I can lock my logo for now. Select your grey background. Go to your rectangle tool and draw your rectangle. It'll go to my default back. Go to your colors. I'm going to make it 40% grey. Perfect. Go back to your layers. We'll lock that background for now. Now we'll add the texture a little bit later. Go back to your logo, select that, select everything on your artboard, and we're going to make it white. So that gives it a nice crisp contrast against the grey. The next thing we're going to do is add our floral background that we created. So just lock your logo, select your background, create a new layer. We'll call that floral. And then we'll paste our image that we created in Photoshop inside that layer. So find your image, paste it. Now drag it around until you know where you want it to overlap. I had in mind this area overlapping over here, this stem, this leaf isolated, this little bit of this leaf overlapping the H. I just wanted the edge of this leaf to overlap the border and this little bud here and that leaf. So I think I'm going to scale it down just a little bit so I can get more of that detail overlapping. So just play around with it until you get exactly what you want. Quite like the idea of the rose being in the bottom left corner. And I just want the tip of this leaf overlapping over there. I think that's pretty good. Perfect. So I'll just lock my floral for now. We're going to make a copy of that in a moment, but we want to create a mask of our logo. So again, we're going to make a copy of that just by dragging it down and copying it. And I'm going to call that H&S logo. Top. I'm going to unlock it and make it a different color, and you'll see why in a moment, just so that when we create the mask, it's quite clear where the mask is. Now there are many ways to do this. You can use your Pathfinder tools to subtract shapes from this mask, or you can use your rubber tool. I like to just use my eraser tool really quickly so I can get an idea and isolate the areas that I'm going to use as my layer mask. So I want to keep the path over this leaf over here because I'm going to use it and paste that image inside. This side of the leaf will be clearly defined, so I'm just going to do a little curve. I can go in and neaten it up a little bit. I'm going to allow some more space on the right side of the leaf to allow for my drop shadow. I'm just going to cut the path there. I want this stem in, so I'm going to cut my path here. Allow for my drop shadow, cut the path there. I'm going to allow for these stems over here, so I'm going to cut the path there. I'm going to allow this leaf to also overlap, so I can just go there. I want the tip of this leaf on this side, and then I want a little bit of this leaf over the H, so I'm just going to cut it there. This might make sense in a moment. I'm just going to delete these areas I don't need anymore, and maybe it will start to make sense. I'll also make a copy of my floral, and that will be the one that will be pasted inside that mask. So I'm going to drag my floral down, make a copy of that, and just drag it on top of the white logo. So now you can see the areas where my red mask is. That is where my leaf and my flower detail will lie on top of my letters, and the rest will all sit within that mask and not be visible. The one thing I want to do, where you have detail right next to some photographic image that needs to go behind your vector, I'm just going to go a little bit closer in, select that, and just drag it in a little bit so that I can get the edge of the leaf. You can always go in and refine it later. There we go. Now if we look at this path, we just want to unlock that floral because we'll be using it in a moment. You'll see it's all separate paths. Again, we need to make sure that it's a compound path. So I'm going to select all of these. Go to my object, go down to compound path make or Command 8. And there I have my compound path. So make sure you have that layer selected, and then select your floral layer. And then we're going to make a clipping mask. So go to Object, Clipping Mask, Make, or Command 7. And there you go. You have your image pasted inside that mask. Now you might notice some white lines where your mask was. This is just a characteristic of Illustrator. It shows the mask lines, but in your final artwork, anything that gets exported like a PDF or anything for final print will not show those lines. It's purely how Illustrator displays the mask. We want to add the drop shadow to this particular rose that sits on top. So we're going to select that rose, well, not our mask. We want to select only the rose and not the mask. So there's my rose. Go to Appearance in your panel and FX, Stylize, and we want to add a drop shadow. So you can add a preview to that so that you can see what your drop shadow is going to look like. There you can see it on the white. So you can increase your offset, and that just moves the shadow a little bit further away from the image. You can increase your blur, but I think that's blur 1 is not too faint. There's a little bit of sharpness to it, and my opacity is at 40. Make sure your mode is multiply. Multiply just allows any color that's underneath the shadow to show through, and then I'll go OK. Perfect, so we'll just check our layers. You'll notice that the detail inside the floral copy has disappeared, so we can actually delete that, and that is our mask. The last thing we want to add is our texture to the grey background. So create a new layer, like that. We're just going to lock our top layer. And again, we're just going to drag a rectangle over the top. Not red. We'll make it a slightly darker grey. So our background is 40. So I'm going to make that 50. And then you want to go to Effect. Go all the way down to Texture. Select Grain. Under Grain you have Intensity and Contrast, and then you have a different type of grain type. I like to use Sprinkles because it has a sort of a random texture to it. Sprinkles, and Intensity, you can drag it up or down. It goes a little bit dark. I want it a little bit more subtle, so I think where it was at 80 is pretty good. I like the strong contrast, or else it goes a little bit faint. But you can play with the different settings under your texture to create the right look. And then just press OK. Now the important thing we want to do now is make sure that the grey underneath the layer shows through. So go to your Appearance, and under Opacity, click on that. And we want to change that to Multiply. Like I mentioned before, that allows the background color to show through. And then you can take your opacity down here to create something a little bit more subtle. There you go. So there's our artwork in many different layers. Grey background, I'll just add that as texture. Our floral, our H&S logo, and then logo top, which is our mask. So now it's your turn. We'd love to see how you create layers in Illustrator using a combination of vector images and photographic images, and using your layers and overlapping parts of the photographic image above the vector. So have fun with this one and upload all your great designs into Dex. We look forward to seeing your work. And that's all from me for today. Goodbye.